Edmonton-Ellerslie on Amendment A7.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As always, it's a pleasure to get up in this House and speak to bills that we have before us. And in this particular case, I'll be speaking to the amendment brought forward by the member from Chestermere Rocky View, pardon me. Chestermere Rocky. As has been pointed out by members from the other side of the House, I was a union member. They've said it very clearly. The member from Edmonton-Ellerslie used to be a union from that side of the House, not this side of the House. Well, on this side of the House, everyone knows too.
More amicable, though.
Yeah. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud to have been a union member. And I'll be honest with you, when in the union that I was in, I felt that it needed better leadership. Now, don't get me wrong, the leadership that it had, they were good people. But one of the things that I wanted to do was get involved in my union. And I decided that I was going to work on the bylaws committee. So I put my name forward, and I was selected to be on the bylaws committee, voted in to be on the bylaws committee. Eventually, I then decided to put my name forward as the vice president of the union. And I campaigned, and the members elected me to become their vice president. I was elected.
Democratically elected.
And not only was I elected, but I was elected with about 71% of the vote.
Ooh.
Because, see, this is the amazing thing about democracy, that when you campaign, you talk about your ideas. So I used to spend every lunch hour, because the lunch hour is when I had free, because I had to work during the business hours. I wasn't doing anything wrong. During my free time, I was going out there and I was talking to other members of the union, and I was saying, hey, this is what I would like our union to be as we move forward. Got elected. Then, at the suggestion of many members, they were like, Rod, you should run for president of the union. And I said, okay, I can do that. And I decided to put my name forward at the next election. I put my name forward and campaigned about the ideas where I wanted to see our union go, where many people had suggested to me where they want to see the union go. And gladly, I put my name forward, and guess what? I was elected. I was elected.
Democracy.
And I say this because, to me, unions are probably one of the best examples of democratic institutions that we have in our society. This is what's really important here, right? Members have an opportunity to vote for their elected representatives. So when the members from across the way start talking about union bosses, and I've even heard a couple of times the derogatory name calling them union thugs.
Shame.
That's shameful.
Shame.
I mean, we want to maintain a certain level of decorum in this House. We're talking about people. We're talking about colleagues of mine. So it's very important that I just share with the members across the way, please, let's be respectful, right? If you want to call them, and it's really strange, this whole thing of union boss, right? Because as far as I know, a boss isn't elected to run the business. Am I right? They run a business, and it's their right. They're job creators. They're doing their part for the society, but they're the boss. And nobody questions them. What they say goes, right? They're not elected. So then I'm wondering, okay, so here we got an institution that's democratic, and people elect their leadership. and they have a president and a vice president and a treasurer and a secretary and perhaps many other positions on the union leadership, on the directors of the union, and they're all elected. So I think the whole thing, the whole concept that the members from across the way in the wording of union boss is perhaps a little bit, it's a misconception. Yeah. And union thugs is derogatory. And I would suggest to the members across the way, who, with many of them, I respect a great deal. I respect a great deal. I would never say something bad about any member. But I want to highly suggest, please, refrain from using that kind of language so that we can maintain a certain level of decorum in this House. Now, the other point that I wanted to make about unions, and I already mentioned that unions have a treasurer, right? And guess what? The amendment that we have before us from the member of Chestermere Rocky View is suggesting that unions must disclose on a semi-annual basis to the employees it represents the details of any expenditure of union dues remitted pursuant to this section. From my experience, now I've already mentioned I've been the president and vice president and on the board for the Non-Academic Staff Association. I was also part of the Chemical Energy and Paper Workers Union for a time. Another union that I'm very proud to be associated with, which over time has become now uniform. But what's really important is that the treasurer, and again, I'm speaking to my experience and the unions that I've been in, and I know that, and this happens in many unions, they do a financial report at every monthly meeting.
Yep.
So the amendment that the honourable member is proposing would actually mean less disclosure than what's actually currently happening in most unions. Right? And you know, I would almost dub this the go to a union meeting amendment.
Maybe we should have consulted with unions before putting it forward.
So I think it's really important that people understand, and by no means am I trying to man-explain, I'm just sharing information with the honourable member, that it's really important that people understand that disclosure is part of the democratic institution of the union, and they communicate what they are spending and how they are spending it at every possible opportunity. And I'll never forget that the treasurer in our union, and I've heard this about other unions as well, the treasurer will always say, the books are open. Any one of you members want to come and see what we are spending our money on, what the union dues are that are coming in, what we're spending on, the books are open for you, membership. Come on in. You're a member of this union, and you have the democratic right within our union structure to know what we are spending our money on because it's your money. So, again, I go back to the fact that unions are democratic institutions, and the other important part that I want to suggest is that, unlike a corporation, where you have to be a stockholder and you can vote based on the amount of stock that you have in that corporation, a union's quite different. One member, one vote. And you know what? I've always been a supporter of that concept. One union, one vote. And the reason why I say it is because I've been a part of other governing structures. You know, non-profit organizations or people that are trying to get a non-profit off the ground or this or that. And people sway away from that idea of one person, one vote. They're like, oh, well, I'm part of another organization that's going to be part of this group, and I represent 100 people, so I want to I want to have 100 votes to my name. But in a union, one person, one vote. Very democratic. And disclosing how much money the union is spending and what it's spending on and is always connected to the vision of the union. And this is another point that I'm just going to finish up on, is this whole concept that, you know, very eloquently members from the other side were talking about how individual rights over the collective rights, and you know, and the whole concept of opting out from paying your union dues. But then I would ask, well then would you opt out from the benefits that the union is getting you because you're a part of that union?
Yep.
And I want people to think about this. What are all the rights, the workers' rights, what are all the workers' rights that we've managed to establish? Sorry, I got my union hat on. I'm not, and like I said, I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm proud to have been a union member, right? What are all the benefits that workers have now and will have when we pass this piece of legislation?
Weekends.
I'm so proud of everything that unions have been able to accomplish, you know, since the onset of the Industrial Revolution. Think about it when, I mean, and by no means am I suggesting that the members across the way would support this, but think about it. Back in the day, children that were 8 years old were having to work in factories. This still happens in some places in the world. Children. I have an 8-year-old. And I think to myself, oh my God, if my son, who's 8 years old right now, were subjected to the kinds of things that people in the past were subjected to. Now, I'm not saying that the owners of the factories and the businesses were bad people because of it. They were just following the existing laws of the land. Much like now. The owners, the bosses, the people who run, and don't get me wrong, I understand that these are they're our job creators. They need to be respected. But we also need to have balance. We need to have balance between the job creators and what they're doing in order to benefit our society and help our economy grow, and the rights of the average individual who works for those businesses.
Here.
When we establish the right balance between those two things, we're going to have a healthy democracy, sustainable communities that thrive, where individuals that live in neighborhoods have children that go to school and people are living at a good standard. A good standard of living, that's what we're after.
You're here.
That balance. Now, when the laws of the land don't reflect the balance that should exist, then that's where the problem lies. And employers, a majority of employers, don't get me wrong, the members from across the way have made the point. There's lots of employers out there that do more than what they should under the current legislation. I get that. That's wonderful. That's beautiful. But not all of them do. And some of them just try to meet the bare minimum.
Some of them don't even meet that.
And this is our opportunity. By passing this piece of legislation in this session, we are going to bring the standard up and just have us match other jurisdictions across our great country. And to quote my good friend,
Calgary Northwest.
Eric.
West Yellowhead.
And to quote my good friend from West Yellowhead, what's wrong with that? Thank you, Madam Chair.